Daryl Boyd, Jerusalem Temple Church.
Now just freeze up, huh?
Somebody driving, yes.
Okay.
Abraham Thompson.
Is now joining.
Glenn Harris.
Is now joining.
Glenn Harris.
Is now exiting.
All right, good morning, everybody. I think everybody has gotten in and probably gotten settled, but just in case, there may be a little bit of delay with the presentation as people are coming in. If you are not muted, please go ahead and mute yourself. As we go throughout the presentation, we'll let you unmute yourself at the end when we have questions. So good morning. Welcome to our nonprofit information grant prep session. Now, this is for our grant prep. The FY26 application has not been released, but there is a number of items that can be done and should be done before the application actually begins, because there are some things that do take a little time. So that's why we go ahead and prep this for y'all, and that way you can go ahead and get a head start. So my name is Beth Laughlin. I'm the Grants and Finance Director here at the Mississippi Office of Homeland. I have several of my staff on the phone or on the call. So as we're going through the presentation, if you have questions, just put them in the chat box and my staff will be able to answer those questions for you. And of course, as I mentioned at the end, we will have a time where you can ask questions off of mute. So if you have not already, put in your name and your agency in the chat box. We would most appreciate that. So that way we have an idea of who's attended and if we have to get back in contact with you. So we do get a lot of questions about, is the PowerPoint recorded? No, unfortunately, we do not record it, but the presentation is already on our
Unknown
website.
participant is now joining.
So the best place, and this is just from this point forward, the best place to get information about
Unknown
this particular
participant is now
grant
exiting.
is our website. So simple way for you to find us, do a Google search for the Mississippi Office of Homeland Security. And when you get to that website, it pops up and there's a section to the right that says grants. And if you hover over that, there will be a drop-down box, and then you can click the nonprofit grant program. And under there are just a host of resources. Everything that we're going to go over today is listed on that website, as well as the last year's application. So we'll kind of touch on that later. All right, so these are a couple of things that we're going to go over today. It does look like a lot, and we are going to cover a good bit of information in the short time that we're going to be together. But this is extremely important information to get you ready. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the grant is, important dates, eligibility. So if you are actually eligible to apply or not, how do you do a threat assessment, getting your unique entity identification number, what a mission statement is, what the old application looks like, and possibly what the new one will look like, and then kind of the do's and don'ts, what you can apply for. We'll go over the AEL list, and then we'll talk about a little bit more information
Is
about
now exiting.
what's going to happen when the application is actually released. All right, so as we get into this, as I mentioned, this particular webinar is for grant prep. This is not for the application yet. Right now, if many of y'all watch the news, we are still waiting for our FY26 appropriation. So FEMA
Unknown
/
participant
Homeland
is now
Security
joining.
has not received their appropriation for the upcoming grant year. So until that appropriation is passed by Congress and the House, this grant program is just on hold. It's coming. It's already in the budget. We're just waiting for them to release that appropriation for the budget. So we are still waiting for that. Right now, we do not exactly know what that application or what new rules are going to be within the funding guidance. We will know that after they release the budget, they send a notice of funding. And then at that point, we will be able to move forward with what that application will be. Now, I will say that this application, when it is released, it's not a guarantee for funding. This funding is highly competitive, not only against those that are applying in Mississippi, but also across the nation. So you must write a really great application. So as we move into this and you're starting to think about what you want to actually apply for, do make sure you are paying very close attention. This grant is primarily based around the need of the high risk of terrorist attacks. Now, this is not a crime grant. This is not a grant that you just get lights and a fence and a security system. There is a reason behind the grant itself. So you must write the grant application as if you are for high risk of terrorist attacks or acts of extremism. So over the past couple of years, Mississippi has been very fortunate with the awarding of several grants. We've actually done a lot better than some of the other states. Each year, we typically get between 25 and 40 grants, and we usually receive anywhere from about 2.5 to 3.5 million. So it just really depends on what's going on and what we get appropriated by the federal government. All right, so important dates. As I mentioned, there's not a lot of information that I can share at the moment because we just don't know yet. Right now, the application release date is to be determined. The best place to find out when that application is released is to check our website. Right now, we have no idea. We hope it will be within the next few months, but we just don't know yet. Once we have the application, we know FEMA's deadlines, then we will set an application deadline for our office. Now, our office deadline is different than FEMA's. FEMA's deadline is for the state, not for you. Your deadline is our deadline with Mississippi. So once the deadline has come and gone, we will go through an application review period. And then at that time, we will make announcements after FEMA has reviewed all of the awards. And then we should have a period of performance between September 1st through 8/31/2029. Now, this particular grant is based on FEMA's decision. This is not a decision from our office. So all applications get submitted to FEMA for their review and for their approval. And then they submit a list to us with those that are going to be awarded. Now, we do not know. That's a common question. If you don't get awarded, a lot of people ask, well, what did I do wrong? Or why did I not get picked? Unfortunately, FEMA does not let us know those reasons why you're not picked. They just give us a list of who's awarded. All right, so before you write your application, first you need to determine if you're actually eligible to apply for the grant itself. Now, this particular grant is strictly for nonprofit organizations, and that means that you are going to have to be eligible under that 501c3. Now, eligible nonprofits must have a reason to apply. So you do have to be at a high risk of a terrorist attack or an act of extremism. Now, there are a couple of exceptions for eligibility. If you are a house of worship and you do not have that 501c3, then you are actually eligible for this funding. You do not have to send in your 501c3 information. You are exempt from that. But if you are just a regular nonprofit, you will have to share with us your 501c3 information. We'll get to that a little bit later. Now, another thing that you must have before to make sure that you're eligible for this grant is you will have to have a unique entity identification number. And we're going to go through that in just a few minutes to kind of share with you how to get that. You do have to appear not on that federal suspended or debarred list. So the reason why you have a UEI number is to make sure you are eligible for funding and the federal government can give you funding. Now, some of the organizations that are not part of this are organizations that are active in politics, lobbying, or advocacy work, utility companies, for-profit transportation, for-profit hospitals, medical centers, or older care facilities, volunteer fire department, community services like Rotary clubs, Lions Club, also labor, agricultural, or horticultural organizations, and then homeowners associations as well. So if you are one of those groups, unfortunately, this is not the grant for you. Okay, so when the application, we've gone through the appropriation, FEMA gives us the go-ahead to release the application. We will be releasing that on our website. So everything will be placed on our website, all the documents, the funding guidance, everything. But right now, at this time, it's not out. I keep saying that is because we always get questions. I'll get a question in 2 weeks asking me, has it been released yet? On the website. Also, as you see on the screen in that little blue link, that is our website. So make sure you click on that when you get the PowerPoint or write that down, because that's extremely important for you to always check when any of our grants are posted and allowed. All right, so these are some things that, and really the reason why we're talking today, is there's several steps that you need to work on now. And these are some things that do take a little bit of time. So we're going to go through each of these sections in a little bit more detail, so that way you have a heads up on exactly what to do before the application is released. Now, when the application is released, sometimes those timelines are very short. So to get some of these items done in a short period of time will make it extremely difficult on you. So if you are thinking about applying, I would go ahead and start working on this. All right, so the very first thing is your vulnerability assessment. Also, like I just mentioned, your unique entity identification number. You will have to have a mission statement, and if you are not a house of worship, you will need a copy of your 501c3 documentation. So the first thing we're going to go over today is your vulnerability assessment. Now, we have a couple of different resources on how to get this done. So as you see, the very first one is the Houses of Worship Security Self-Assessment. So this is on our website as a link. This is actually put forth by CISA. Now, it does say houses of worship, but anybody can actually use this one. So it's not just for churches or synagogues. Anybody can use this one. There is also a resource that our office developed. It is on our website. We'll show you a picture of it in a minute. And then you can also get your local law enforcement to come out and then go with you through your facility, and then they can tell you where your possible vulnerabilities are. Now, if you're going to go that route and you're going to contact your local law enforcement, go ahead and do that now, not 2 days before the application is due, because of course they have a million things to do and they may not be able to schedule it, and then you may not be able to meet that requirement. So if you are going to get one from your law enforcement, I would go ahead, get it scheduled, and then move forward. So this is what the Houses of Worship self-assessment looks like. It is super easy to go through. It gives you a range from very low to very high. This is a self-assessment, so you don't have to have anybody with knowledge really to do this one. Very simple to go through. This is just a resource that you have available. We also have one as well. Ours is not any better or really any different than any of the other ones. We just decided to create our own. So also very simple. You do not have to have any training to do it. It is a self-assessment. You will go through the different sections of your organization, and it's just basically ranking different things. Do you have this? Do you have that? And then at the end, you'll be able to kind of identify where your vulnerabilities and where your gaps are. All right, next is your unique entity identification number. Now, this is sometimes a sticky point because this is not done through our office. This is done through a different federal agency. So if you are going and searching for a place to do your federal unique identity number, if you see anywhere where it says that they're going to charge you X amount of dollars to get it, that's a scam. This was more prevalent when the new UEI numbers changed from the old DUNS numbers. It's really not that prevalent now, but your UEI numbers are federal identification and it is free. So if you go to any website where it says it costs something, that is not the right place for you. Now your number is going to look kind of like the example on the screen. It's going to be different letters, numbers in it. Your identification does not expire, and you will have a choice if you want that information public or to remain private. Now, this is a website that you need to go to get one set up. So if you have not started your process, I highly recommend going ahead and starting the process now. So when you get to the sam.gov website, and that is a universal website for a lot of different things with the federal government, on the very right side in that green box where it says Get Started, that's where you're going to click. Now, if you already have one and you just need to renew it, then you'll click the other box. And then it's going to walk you through the process. Now, we do have these resources on our website in case you do or don't remember what we talked about today, or maybe if the resources changed, but it does walk you through exactly where and what's going to happen as you go through your registration process. Now, there is a checklist that's on their website. We have it posted on ours as well, but these are some things that will help you know what you're going to need to provide. It will also give you the phone number, the help desk, and give you some information on how to contact them. Now, this is required. You must have a number before you can get awarded. This is not an exception. You have to have this. And sometimes it does take a little bit of time. Now, we've had lots of people contact us saying that they've run into some issues. They can't seem to get the number, can't get someone to contact them. Just continue to work with them. Unfortunately, we don't have any connection with this agency. So unfortunately, we can't help you out to get that information. Now, just to kind of give you a heads up of some of the information that they're looking for are your organization start date, your fiscal year information, and then your incorporation information. So your organization start date and your incorporation information may be different. And that's where some people sometimes have some challenges. Also, they're going to ask you about your financial information, executive compensation, federal contracts, and then points of contact. So those are all things that you kind of need to think about before you start the process. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, we do not have access into the system. So it is the organization's responsibility to fulfill those requirements before your application, because without that UEI number, we will not be able to issue out federal funds. All right, so now we're going to talk about the mission statement. Now, most of y'all probably already have a mission statement or a kind of a goal statement from your organization or your church. That is exactly what we're talking about here. So if you already have a mission statement, you were pretty much one step ahead. So you will put that mission statement on your letterhead, and then you will submit that in with your application. So that one actually you could probably get done today. All right, so proof of your 501c3 is required. So as I mentioned, if you're a house of worship, this is not a requirement. But if you're not, you will need to provide your letter or your proof of nonprofit status. All right, so now we're just going to simply touch and take a look back at last year's application. Now, this is also on our website, and so you can see the full document, as well as the funding guidelines and also the resources and the PowerPoint that was provided for last year's grant. So that way you can kind of have an idea of what FEMA is most likely going to ask for. Now, for the last several years, the application has been very similar. There's only been a few little pieces that may change, but for the most part, it's going to be very similar. And exactly what I just said. It's going to be a good reference for you to see what might be coming out. I don't expect for them to completely change it this year, so they may tweak a little bit or revise a couple of statements. But for the most part, you're going to see the questions or the data they're asking for, and it'll give you an idea of the budget and some of the things that you will be having to fill out. So this is what the application basically looks like. And we're not going to go over this in a whole lot of detail, but the application is in a PDF fillable. Now, I will give you a hint. Or basically just a statement that you will have to have a PDF software on your computer. Now, sometimes this application, unless they change it this year, does have some difficulties. This one is sometimes a little tricky to get into. So when that application comes out, you are having trouble, we'll be happy to help walk you through that. Actually, my staff has been really, really good with finding ways to get into it. But just go ahead in preparation, go ahead and update your latest Adobe. Now, this is not something you have to pay for. It is a free software, but it is going to be required for you to fill out the application. The past several years, this application has to be exactly in the same format that it was provided to you. So a good hint is the little blue cornflower colored boxes. Those have to kind of remain in that same color, so that way you know it's still in the PDF fillable. We'll go over all of that at the award time. All right, so one thing I do want you to be very, very, very noticeable on this. Although there are a lot of pieces of equipment that you can apply for, there are going to be requirements. There is also allowable and unallowable equipment. And really, you should be focusing on your top priority. Although there may be 50 items that you can apply for, I don't recommend doing that. I recommend you focusing on maybe 1 or 2 projects. It also has to be based around terrorism. So when you're thinking about what you might apply for, do think about, is this going to reduce a threat? What items would I need to respond? And if something happens, how am I going to be able to recover from said attack? So as I mentioned, all this is on our website, but the link that you see at the bottom, that's going to take you to the FEMA website. So as soon as FEMA releases this notice of funding or documents for FY26, they will post information on their website. Now, what you will see on their website is the notice of funding. That is not necessarily related to you. A lot of that information is, but it is mainly for the state. So you are going to be a sub-grant from the main grant that us as the state will apply for. So this could change, but last year they did increase the amount of maximum amounts that you could request. Now, like I said, we do not know what's going to happen for 2026, but last year in FY25, there was an amount up to $200,000 per site. And when I'm saying per site, that means per address. So if you have multiple sites, you can apply for up to $200,000 per address. So if you're applying for multiple sites, you will have to have your vulnerability assessment for each site. You can apply for up to 4 different locations. Now, I will highly recommend, and they are very particular about this, is when they say $200,000, it cannot be $200,000 and a penny. It must be $200,000 or less. Anything over is going to knock you out of the application process. So if you're getting quotes, if you're getting estimates for different types of equipment, and you realize it's going to be $205,000, you're going to need to cut something. Or it's going to need to be on your church or nonprofit to cover the difference, because they will only allow up to $200,000. Now, do remember the equipment, which is primarily what most people apply for with this grant. It is for target hardening and physical security. All items are going to have to be on the AEL list. Now, FEMA has been very, very good about expressing and telling the states exactly what equipment is allowable. All of that's on our website. So if there is something that you're thinking about, I would go ahead and review what the AEL list says. Go ahead, look at it, look at all the descriptions, and see what focus you want to have for your application. Now, one thing I suggest, and if you have questions, please let us know. Be very careful with what you ask for. The AEL list is a bit confusing, and I'll show you kind of how we've broken it down, hopefully to make it a little easier, but it is basically written in governmental language. So sometimes it gets very confusing about what something is. An example, you would think if you were going to build a fence, you would think that the gate would be part of the fence, because normally you got to get in and out. Well, FEMA doesn't think that way. So you would need to apply for a fence and a gate. That's just one example of some of the items that are a little confusing. All right, so what we have done is we have created a little cheat sheet. We have this on our website, but this is very important because it's going to kind of give you a little bit of information and a little breakdown to make it a little bit more understandable. So if you see on the very left side, it says the AEL code. Then you have the title, and then you have a description. And then in some places, there are additional descriptions where we have broken it down to make it a little bit easier to digest. So this is an example of some of the software that is actually allowable. So there's not only physical security, but there are some cybersecurity pieces that you can request. Now, for the cybersecurity or a contractual service, we will only pay for up to 1 year. So if you're looking for the example of malware or antivirus protection, and you get a request or a quote for 3 years, just know we're only going to pay for 1 year. All right, this is a very good example. So there are a lot of pieces of eligible and allowable information on the AEL. Now, there are probably 50, 60 items on the list. Not all of them are going to be good for your organization. So just because it's allowable probably doesn't mean that you need it. So the example that you see on the screen is a trash-proof trash can. I don't know anybody that needs a bomb-proof trash can in Mississippi. Just probably not something that you need. Not to mention they're extremely expensive. So if you put something like that, you're going to really need to write a great justification as to why you would need it. But I will tell you, we've never funded one of those the whole time we've had this grant. So while there are some things that are allowable, you will have to show a need, not necessarily the want. And just because it's on the list doesn't mean that you probably need it. All right, so a very good key point. Several years ago, FEMA did break out installation with their equipment. So before, it was just a piece of equipment, you got your quotes, you were good to go. Now, you must break out your installation costs. So when you're preparing your application and you're thinking about how much money it's going to take to build a fence, do make sure you put enough installation cost in your application. If you're building a $75,000 fence, most likely $4,000 for the installation's probably not going to cover it. And if you don't have enough in there, you're not going to be able to have those monies for the overage or underage, I guess you could say. Now, there are some allowables that are in the application or in the funding guidance. Now, training is one of those, but training can be done by our office. We have several trainers in our office that can provide church security training, active shooter, CERT training, or one of our newer programs, targeted violence. All of those are free, and we will come to you to do that. All you have to do is let us know that you're interested. You can send us an email. You can call our office. We'll put you in contact with our trainers, and we can get something scheduled and set up for you. There's no need to put training in your application because we can do that for free. All right, so this is also a big one. Although contracted security is in the eligibility, our office has never gotten it. We've never paid for it. So at this point, most of our buildings, most of our churches, nonprofits, it's not really a requirement. You must have a need, not a want. Also, private contracted security is extremely expensive. So if it were me, I would rather buy items that can do those types of things and give my organization more security than paying for somebody to sit there. That's just me. All right, so also what you can add in, this is something that's happened over the last few years, is you can add in management and administrative cost. So you can ask for up to 5% of your grant to go towards management cost that can be used for a person that is actually working on a grant. So an example, if you had a $200,000 award you're planning for, you can take $10,000 of that and put that towards personnel/salary and fringe. Now, what that is that's going to pay directly for the person, their hours for managing the grant. So that's them doing the grant work. That's them putting together the reimbursements. But it cannot be for your CEO, your director, your church staff, or your pastor's salary. So if you do request M&A, you will be required to put in personnel timesheets or activity sheets, and you will have to provide documentation and payroll information of that person that's actually going to be receiving the payment. So all of that will be gone over during grant implementation. All right, so also very helpful. Go ahead, start doing your homework on what some of the things cost. A lot of times people will just throw together some numbers, they'll apply for things, and then when they finally get awarded, they get their quotes. Things are not necessarily in line with what the application is. What you apply for, and if you're awarded, that's what you're going to get. We don't usually do modifications or rescopes just because you got your numbers wrong. So go ahead, really think about what you want and start looking at prices. Also, a really good idea, go ahead, you start checking out your cost. So maybe talk with somebody, get some preliminary quotes. Also, think about what components it's going to take to do a project. So you may want to have somebody come to your facility, take a look at something and say, hey, how much would this cost to do this? And you may wind up being able to do multiple projects, or the cost may be really high and you can only do one. Now, very much recommended, do not guesstimate on how much something's going to cost. Projects do tend to be more expensive than you think. A $5,000 fence that you put in is most likely not going to be $5,000. If you're awarded, there are going to be certain steps that you have to take. And there's just going to need to be some things that we have to have documentation to prove, invoices and quotes and different things. Also, if I were you, I would add a little bit of extra wiggle in your estimates. Now, the reason being is because sometimes costs go up. From the time that you submit your application to the time that you're awarded to the time that you're ready to spend your money. And a lot of times things do go up in cost. So there is an example on the screen that you want to build a fence, and you're awarded, you start the project, you get your quotes, you've done all the things you needed to do, but when you get your quotes, it's $25,000. And then you didn't add in installation, so now that's going to be on you. So make sure that you add enough wiggle in there to cover what could be a little bit increase in some of your costs.
Okay.
All right, we need to kind of go over supplanting. Now, grant funds are not supposed to replace items or expenses that you were already planning to do with your organization. Just because you have federal funds doesn't mean you get to replace those funds with something. So an example is you are already building a fence and you're in the middle of that, but you haven't paid for it. You're doing your quotes, you're getting real close to time to pay for it, but now you got the grant You cannot pay for that fence with the grant funds. This has to be something new and has not started yet. So we cannot fund stuff that is already in process or has already been or has taken place. All right, so as this application is hopefully within the next few months coming about and is going to be released, the applications are going to be released on our website, but we don't know the date yet. I promise you we will let you know as soon as we know. But the best place to go find us, check the website. When the application is getting close, we've gotten it, the application has been posted on our website, we will host grant writing sessions. So we tend to do this is where we walk through every bit of that grant application. We give you ideas on how to fill out the sections. And of course, we answer your questions about what you can and cannot purchase. Now, as I mentioned, I don't think they're going to change much this upcoming year. We just don't know yet. So fingers crossed, it's going to look very similar and they're going to allow the same things as they have in the past. But all of that information we will go over in grant writing. We also provide a funding guidance as well, where same information, but we just have a lot more detail. So we go through the application, we break it out, we give you examples, so that's just an extra resource. All right, so I know there have been a number of questions that have come through as I've been speaking, but if you've got anything additional that maybe you haven't asked, you can go ahead and put it in the chat box, or you can take yourself off of mute, and I'll do the very best I can to answer your questions. All right, are there any questions? I don't see any yet.
I have a question. Is this a reimbursement grant?
Reimbursement grant, but you can also get an advance. So this is one of the grants that you can actually get in advance. So to get that, you would have to submit your invoices. We would approve those, not invoices, your quotes. We would then approve your quotes and then you could move forward. We would then release that money to your agency, and then you would be able to use that advance money to procure your item. We do understand a lot of organizations don't have $75,000 sitting around to go purchase a new security system. So this grant is actually one of those that we can do in advance. But if you choose to do the reimbursement, you can do that as well. So excellent question. All right, there is a question about, oh, go ahead.
Will there be a link somewhere that we can watch this presentation again?
The website, I mean, the PowerPoint is put on our website. It's just in a PowerPoint format, but it is not in a recorded version.
Okay.
But
Thank
it
you.
is actually already posted.
Yes. Question.
Yes, yes, sir.
Can you kind of enlighten us on the time frame once the application deadline is met? Is there some deadline you can say that it will be approved or not?
Well, that's a very good question. And I wish I knew an answer to give you, or a better answer to give you than the one I'm fixing to. Honestly, we have no idea. Those that were awarded or that applied back for our FY25 grant, we had kind of a weird funding season last year with multiple government shutdowns. just a lot of different things. So as people applied for the FY25 last year, unfortunately, those that applied, we still don't know which ones have been awarded yet. We're hoping, because FEMA is currently shut down right now, we are hoping that FEMA will give us the award list within a few months. So honestly, we're expecting to have FY25 and FY26 awarded probably about the same time. So I wish I could give you a more exact answer, but it will depend on FEMA and their timelines.
I got in about 3 minutes late, and I was wondering if there is an established deadline to have the application in for this year.
There will be, as soon as we get the timeline from FEMA. So as I mentioned in the very first, FEMA is going to release a notice of funding. Now that notice of funding is for the state, and they will give the state a deadline. The state's deadline is not your deadline. So we will come up with a deadline prior to the submission application deadline for FEMA. That's usually a couple of weeks before the final deadline, because there's a lot of documentation that we've got to do prior to submitting all of the applications up to FEMA. So it will be established a couple of weeks before the federal deadline.
You said you would notify us when the application is out there. How will we be notified? Would it be through email, or it just be put on your website and we'll need to keep an eye on your website?
We do send out as much information as we can to those that have signed up for grant writing, that we have contact with from over the years. But no matter what, it will always be on our website. As soon as we know any information from FEMA, it immediately gets placed up there. Very good questions. All right, anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You mentioned fence about if you already it does not supplant, it does not replace, I believe. If you
Yes.
have a fence that is not suitable for security, can it be replaced?
We can, and we have in the past. You would have to show in your application the need. But good question.
I have a question.
Okay.
If this is your first time writing a grant, is there something when you go through the grant writing process, can you submit that to your office and your office says, okay, you missing something? Send it back to you,
unfortunately, we don't have the time. I wish that we could, because we do feel like you would need to have, everybody needs to have some kind of technical assistance. But unfortunately, with the tight deadlines, we just don't have time to look through every single application and work with you to make sure it's all right. We'll go over all of that in grant writing. I promise you, this is not a difficult grant to write. But I would recommend go ahead, do the paperwork, get the things that are required done now. Look at last year's application, the funding guidance that's already on the website with examples. And I promise you, that's going to help you out.
Okay.
But if we have questions while we're doing the application, we can
Still on
contact
this
you
computer
for guidance
thing,
on that, right?
These
Yes,
sausage
we can.
things?
Yes.
A-okay.
But we're not gonna, I'm just gonna say, yes, we'll be absolutely happy to help you, but we cannot write it for you.
Yeah, so the tubes are out. If
All
the
right,
tubes come
any other
back, great.
questions?
Other than that, until that, these are good. The spices are
Yes,
A-okay.
the list of items that you say you have, I haven't gotten the
But
alphabets for it,
this
but is it
thing is
pretty
all
easy
about
for us to
grants,
find right now?
and
Oh, yes, it's already on our
uh,
website. Yes.
I'm gonna try and, if the church approves, I'm gonna try and get
All right,
a grant
any
for
other
some
questions?
security stuff at the church. Never done it before, but volunteer for it.
All right, there is a question
Try
about
and learn how to do
submitting
it.
vendor quotes for approval regardless of advance and reimbursement. Absolutely. No matter what, we have to approve your quotes. So yes, and that is just basically from the Mississippi Department of Finance and Administration. So you will have to have quotes. Now, you do not have to submit those with your application, but we do require our nonprofits to submit quotes. We approve them, and then we go through the process of giving you an advance. Now, if you do choose the reimbursement side, what you will be required to do the quotes plus the invoices and proof of payment. So that is standard with all of our grants. So it's not just for the nonprofits, it is for all of our grants. Good question.
And
All
if
right,
we have
so
a federal tax ID, that is, we still have to
not,
get that unique entity
yes,
identification number.
exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The UEI number is different. So there was a question from Ms. Taylor about explaining SAM.gov. SAM.gov is a federal portal where you will do all of the requirements to get a UEI number. So it is super easy to go through, but there are going to be some requirements that you're going to need to have. There are checklists. There are, I think there's actually videos on there now to give you some information on how to do it. But if you run into trouble, there are websites, there is email addresses and phone numbers, I believe, to give you some assistance. All right, any other questions? All right, so the question is date to use the organization versus the incorporation date. So those are two separate dates. You have the date that the organization was established, and then you might have a different incorporation date. It just depends. So that is going to have to be a question that you would need to ask the UEI staff. All right, anything else before we let you go? Okay, I don't see any additional.
Thank you for
Yeah.
thank you for being so thorough.
Well, we try. We try to set you off on the right foot before the application comes out. So we do try. But as I've said multiple times, all of our resources are on our website. You can always email us if you have questions. We have a great staff that can help you. If you have questions about the application, you have questions about the program itself, we are absolutely available for technical assistance. If you are thinking about applying, I definitely would. But please do your homework because we have had applications where people applied for a fence that may be $5,000 and they wound up, it was 50. So do your homework, really think about what's your priority. Do make sure it is based around terrorism or extremism, not crime. And those are really the key pieces. And then once that notice of funding comes out and we were able to release the application, we'll put that on our website. We will schedule grant writing. and then we will go through in a lot of detail exactly what FEMA is looking for a grant application. All right, so I will let everybody go. If you have questions in the meantime, just give us a call or email us.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Casey Thompson, New Life Church, Monticello.
Is now exiting.